Speaker, as I rise to make my contribution on the Narcotics, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substances Amendment number 2 of Bill number 12 of 2021, I bid this Honorable House good afternoon. And to the Honorable Member, my colleague, Vincent Jordan, Member of Parliament, happy birthday. On a heavier note, to those who might have lost a relative or friend as a result of COVID-19, to the families and friends, I will keep you in my prayer, and may God grant you strength. And on a lighter note, a festive season to all. The Narcotics, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substances Act, also commonly termed as NDPS, made with the purpose to control drugs of abuse and prohibit its use, dissipation, distribution, manufacturing, and trade of this substance of abuse. Narcotics drugs are those drugs that induces sleep. And clearly, Mr. Speaker, some members on the other side are sleeping. While psychotropic substances have the ability to alter the minds of individuals, although all these kinds of drugs have their importance in practice of medicine, the main agenda of this act is to have control of manufacturing, possession, sale, and transport of such narcotic and psychotropic substances. This act bans new and emerging psychotropic substances. Resolute upon these drugs are not available over the counter for walk-in individuals. Violation of this law may result in punishment, including rigorous imprisonment, fine, or both. The degree of punishment is dependent upon the harshness of the case being dealt with. Mr. Speaker, NDPS also lacks in differentiating among users, drug peddlers, and hardcore criminals in this drug trade. Mr. Speaker, as it is, the laws of Guyana cannot differentiate between cannabis sativa and what we call pills. Guyana is traditionally known as the land of many waters, but sadly recently, being peddled in international news outlets, has become the transshipment point of drugs, mainly to Europe, Africa, and other Asian routes. Guyana has inherited a cultural roots with mysterious and eccentric ways of worshiping, celebrating festivals and ceremonies. Unlike Western countries, Guyana has been slow to adopt legislation, certain natural forms of narcotic substances, again, with reference to cannabis sativa. Thus, the cultural difference is an important aspect to consider while framing and forcing any drug laws in Guyana. On the other hand, we cannot overlook the menace of substance abuse, which is on the rise in our country. We have a large number of drug addicts in our society. Substance abuse has created a lot of problems, especially in our healthcare sector. And even psychiatric disorder has had a damning effect on our economic situations and even on our budget, because year in, year out, we have to ensure that we spend finances to develop various services to curb these issues that is being dealt with. It also leads to a number of social problems which can be defined under family disintegration that can also lead to criminal activities. The war on drugs has resulted in more sensitive issues than in other pandemoniums in our history. It may be the cause of crime ranging from various color crimes like white collar crime and blue collar crime. The era of terrorism, where drugs are a way of producing funds for terrorist activities, is a very important area which should be taken into consideration, again, while framing and amending the laws related to drugs. Effective laws are necessary to fight the nuisance associated with drugs. According to the World Health Ranking on drug deaths in Guyana, as of 2018, 0.2%. The average death rate is 1.78%. Too many for every 100,000 of Guyanese. In fact, Guyana ranks 57 in the world. And according to the uh, Organization of American States evaluation report on drugs, drug control, one of the recommendations that was made, recommendation 27, Guyana should reaffirm the principle of cooperation contained in international instruments to address the world drug problem through actions to ensure compliance and effectiveness. Mr. Speaker, sadly, this evaluation is incomplete. Now let's get to the meat of the matter with what we're talking about here today, particularly designer drugs. And while the speakers before, more so the Honorable Member Jorma Figueroa would have talked a little bit about the drugs, let me explain to you what designer drugs is. And I'm speaking from an informed point of view, Mr. Speaker. The term designer drugs refers to drugs that are created in a laboratory, fair enough, typically underground or in an illegal lab. A designer drug is created to change properties of a drug that comes from a plant, such as cocaine, morphine, or marijuana, using the tools of chemistry. The result is what we call designer drugs, typically have a different effect on the behavior of the person using it. There are many examples of designer drugs. In fact, some of them were mentioned earlier. One of the most popular one is Molly. Molly comes in has different names like Trump, Ferrari, Mario, Sonic, or even Pokemon. And you know, Mr. Speaker, as the contents of it changes, you know, jokingly I would say maybe someday we will have a drug named after the Honorable Member, Minister Robeson Ben. We have retinol, LSD, methamphetamine. We also have special K, alpha, that's PVP, what we call flakka, synthetic marijuana, U4700, and there are so many others that we can talk about today. The drug name does not really easily roll off your tongue. They come, in most cases, the chemical structure of the substance itself, and that's how they develop the name. Mr. Speaker, the challenge with this bill that I believe is so necessary to pass, as it is right now, a lot of these drugs, even though it creates that highness, it cannot be detected very easily. Even with using a breathalyzer test, let's say, for instance, someone gets into an accident and you do a breathalyzer test on them, it will not show up in your system unless you do a blood test. The other challenge that I have, the reason why I'm supporting this amendment, a person who commits a physical assault or some sort of crime can claim temporary insanity because they would have used this drug. And they likely will get off, providing that they have a really good lawyer, like my colleague, Honorable Member Kemra Tramjatan. These are some dangerous times, Mr. Speaker. And in the words of the Honorable Member Sherrod Duncan, things tight. And we cannot be hypocritical in our approach to dealing with this drug problem and the psychotropic substance issues that we have in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, times are so hard and people are looking for an escape. And sadly, this is the escape route that they choose to take because it creates enjoyment for them. They get to separate themselves from the harsh realities of life. For instance, dealing with a 7% increase, which is not enough. The cost of living constantly going up. Mr. Speaker, the environment is what causes many young people to find solitude in using these drugs. Mr. Speaker, when we drive around Georgetown and some parts of the other regions, you see poverty. You see families not being able to provide for their children, especially single parents. And what do they resort to? A temporary escape. And unless we, as parliamentarians and ministers, the government and the opposition, change this reality, provide equal opportunities for everyone, That is the only way we can curb this drug situation that we have in Guyana. Mr. Speaker, while some adults might look down on young people and say that, they're a menace to society, really and truly, they're asking for help. That is all they're asking for. And I'm trusting that maturity prevails us in terms of making these careful considerations when making this amendment to this bill. Mr. Speaker, a few years ago, as I think back, there was this rapper called Waka Flocka who came to Guyana, shot a music video here, and he praised Guyana for being a transshipment point for drugs. This is how the world is seeing Guyana. And I believe that as a people, if we are an oil producing nation, we have to act differently and create, again, equal opportunities for other people. Mr. Speaker, one other harsh reality I have to bring to your notice, right, is when it comes to the cost of these drugs. Mr. Speaker, a Bang's beer, maybe in some places, is $300. A Stag beer is $250, and I can go on and on and on. Now, you would need maybe about 5 to 6 of those just to get a high. But with just $200, you can get a high for the entire day. Mr. Speaker, let me explain. Now, with this molly, they're now mixing it with gasoline and burning it. It creates a little froth. When that now is dried, they scrape it off and sell it to anyone for $200. And that will take them through the day they would feel nice for the rest of the day. A pill, you can get it for $800. And that will take you through the day. Drugs have become so affordable, and this is worrisome, especially in a society where we have almost 65% and over of young people who are unemployed. A lot of them are unemployed. Mr. Speaker, when it comes to reintegration, we should not treat recreational, ceremonial, or even drug addicts as outcasts. If the law does not provide for it, one can only conclude that they need help. It is time that the government invests more in the lone psychiatric hospital which we have, and that is the Madhouse and other clinics across the country. Mr. Speaker, the hospitals and wards lack maintenance, resources, even the frontline workers' risk allowance, salary increase, and to top it off, we don't have enough mental health experts. Under the APNU plus AFC, with the leadership of the Honorable Member Kemraj Ramchatan, introduced the Citizen Strengthening Program, where young males and females who in many cases were first-time offenders in crime or even got pregnant were given a second chance at school to learn a trade, earn a stipend, and even get a second chance to get a respectable life. These are the sort of forward-thinking, and we need the continuation of such programs so that our young people can be catered for, especially when dealing with drugs and these psychotropic substances. Effective implementation of NDPS Act for regulating drugs and its use in the society needs to be kept under constant review. This is no walk in the park, we approve it and then this is done. It needs to be constantly worked on. And I'm trusting that the Honorable Member, Minister Rupsenben, consider the following. Number one, we need to ensure and monitor the distribution of prescribed over-the-counter drugs. These drugs, which are opioid painkillers, you can go and get them and use them. And that is a form of drug, so we need proper regulations in that part. Number two, data of drug addicts should be well maintained and regulated, incorporating various organizations working in this area. Number three, improving coordination among regions for investigation in cases related to drugs. Number four, differentiating synthetic drugs from natural drugs can help can be helpful for clear lines of investigation. 5, transparency of the policy can be given advent for effective solving crimes related to drugs. Number 6, understanding the drug pattern is an essential requirement for eliminating the problem of illegal drugs of this country. Number 7, bring awareness and educating can help in eradicating the problem of drug addiction in our country. And number 8, finally, rehabilitation centers should be coordinated with central government for preventing the substance abuse of drugs and its practice. This may be very well result in finding alternative methods of curbing the growing nuisance. Mr. Speaker, I was watching the news the other day, and New York decided to have this safe house where persons can go and use their heroin. And this, according to them, within a week, would have saved at least 17 lives from overdosing. And I believe, like I said, it's a work in progress, but we have to come up with the ideas and be inclusive in tackling this problem. Mr. Speaker, with regards to the Constitution, the power states, by Article 65 of the Constitution, the Parliament of Guyana is empowered to make laws for peace and order and even good governance of Guyana. And within this mantra, I strongly believe that this amendment will ensure same. Mr. Speaker, with good intention and conviction based on facts, I am in support of the Narcotics, Drugs, and Psychotropic Substance Amendment number 2, Bill number 2021. Mr. Speaker, I thank you for your indulgence, and I yield the remaining of my time to make way for other contributors.
Thank you very, very much, Honorable Member.